In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace a front lower control arm on a 2006 Infiniti G35 Sedan base model. This is the forward lower control arm, which is closest to the front of the vehicle. The factory authorized service manual calls this a transverse link. I'm also going to be replacing the sway bar link. Let me show you where this part is located. It's going to be this control arm right here. There's another lower control arm behind it, which the factory service manual calls the compression rod. First things first, some liquid motivation. I've been procrastinating doing this job for the last year at least, but it's really not that bad. First step before the car is off the ground is to measure the distance between the center of the hub and the bottom of the fender. Mine is about 15 inches. We're going to use this measurement later on, I'll explain later. Now we're going to jack up the car from the front. Always put wheel chocks behind the back wheels, you don't want to mess around with safety. Next step, lift up the car from the front. I'm doing each side separately here with a trolley jack and two of these all-in-one bottle jacks / jack stand. Make sure to lift both sides so that both front wheels are off the ground. That'll make the job easier. Next, we're going to take off the wheel. Put the wheel underneath the side of the car you're working on for added safety. Give the car a good shake and make sure it's rock solid. Alright, so the first step to get this job done is to remove the cotter pin for the lower ball joint nut. Use a pair of long nose or diagonal pliers to straighten it out and pull it out. You can see here I struggled a bit trying to go in different directions, different angles. And also I was very careful not to hit the brake line above there. You could remove the caliper bracket just to give yourself a little bit more room, but I didn't think it was necessary. I was going to edit this part out, but I wanted to show some of the real life struggles that people face when doing a job like this. In the angle I was in, it wasn't obvious to me that the cotter pin wasn't exactly straight. That's why I was struggling here. So once I realized that it wasn't straight, I straightened it out and it came out pretty quickly. Once you remove the cotter pin for the lower ball joint nut, the next step is to remove the 22mm nut. To do the rest of this job, tension is going to be your friend. So the first thing we're going to do is use a jack to jack up the knuckle from where the lower ball joint is. That's going to put tension on the suspension and make the nut a lot easier to remove. In fact, without this tension, I don't even think it's possible to remove the nut because the pin inside the lower ball joint is just going to keep on spinning and spinning. Make sure this is the first nut you remove because you want the tension to be highest at the step. When I did the other side, I wasted about an hour and a half trying to get this nut off because I had first removed other nuts. Because the tension wasn't high enough, that pin I was talking about earlier just kept on spinning. So I had to retighten all the fasteners and try again. And finally was able to break it free. Alright, so the knuckle is jacked up a bit. Now we're going to give it a try. Later in the video, I'll show a graphic with all the bolt sizes and torque specs. I'm trying a breaker bar here and it's not budging. The nut is moving with the breaker bar, but I didn't have enough tension, so the pin is moving with it. So I'm going to jack up the knuckle a bit more. I'm going to give it another try with the impact. Sorry for the bad camera angle. You can see we've made some progress, so I'm going to keep at it.
Bingo.
I'll clean up these threads a bit with a wire brush. The next fastener we're going to tackle is the sway bar link nut, which is a 17mm.
This is also a 17mm back here.
I was referring to the upper sway bar link nut, which is out of view right now. I also can't get to it right now because the knuckle is jacked up and there's not enough space, but we'll get to it later. Next, we're going to take care of the strut nut. This is also a 17mm, but you're going to need a wrench on the other side to hold it so it doesn't spin. I'm putting the nut partway back because I'm going to try to hit it with a soft face hammer to see if the bolt comes out. That way the threads are protected. It's not budging, so we're going to try something else. This is another step where changing the level of tension is going to help you big time. Right now there's too much tension on the suspension because the knuckle is jacked up, and that's what's preventing the bolt from coming out. Keep playing around with the height level of the knuckle until the bolt is easily removed. As soon as I relieved the tension, the bolt was free and easily removed. In hindsight for this step, I should have removed the jack from the beginning. Now I'm getting to that upper sway bar link nut that I was talking about earlier. This is also a 17mm. If you're not able to loosen it by hand, just use a dead blow hammer to hit the breaker bar. This is a pretty tight space, so I wasn't able to fit the impact in here. We're going to take the nut off the rest of the way with a ratchet.
Why am I tightening it again? Let me jack it up a little bit.
If something is not coming out fairly easily, we're going to use the jack to either lower or raise the knuckle. In this case, we're going to raise the knuckle and give it another shot. I raised it too much, so I'm lowering it a bit. If you're not replacing the sway bar link, you obviously don't have to fully take it out. You would only need to remove the bottom bolt and just loosen the top bolt. That should allow you to rotate it out of the way. At this point, the only fastener left is the big bolt toward the middle of the car. I'm trying to work the camera here to give you a better view. So this is the last bolt right here, which is a 19mm. Again, you're going to need a wrench or a breaker bar on one side to keep it from spinning. Those were too big for me, so I'm using a ratchet here, which had a thinner head. And I'm going to use an impact on the other side. You could totally do this job without an impact wrench, but it does make the job a bit easier. You would just use a breaker bar to break all the bolts free. I had the ratchet set to the wrong setting, so I flipped the switch. Good example of why it's better to use a breaker bar or a wrench here. The bolt is free, now we just have to take it out, and the control arm should just come right out. The only thing left to do here is to remove it from the ball joint. In this case it's already free, but you might need a ball joint removal tool, or a pickle fork. Make sure this cone shaped thing remains on the ball joint, it's a very important part. And bang, it is free. You can't really see it in the video, but the bushings were all cracked. I'm pretty sure this ball joint has too much play, but that's a job for another day.
It's a ball joint too. Oh, it's right. Oh my goodness.
I was looking for the nut, and of course it was still in the ratchet. I'm just cleaning things up a bit here. Here's our new lower control arm. This is a Mevotech CMS301030. That's for the driver's side. Passenger side is a 1 at the end instead of a 0. I'll put that info in the description of the video. Basically now we just have to reverse our steps to install the new lower control arm.
It's weird. Why is this one like that? I don't know. This one's easier to put.
I'm starting off by reinserting the big bolt toward the middle of the car. Give it a little wiggle if it's not going in freely. Don't tighten anything down yet, so the rest of the installation is easier. I'm just putting the nut back on the other side. Next we're going to put in the new sway bar link. This is labeled as stabilizer connecting rod in the service manual. Most likely it's not going to fit on the first try, so just play around with it. You might also need to lower or raise the knuckle again. You could also try to move the threaded ends on the sway bar link itself if it's easy enough. That little flat shiny metal tab should sit flush with the flat side on the stabilizer bar. Put the top 17mm nut back.
Oh man.
I realized that was the wrong nut, so I took it off and put the correct one.
What's this for?
The sway bar link came with new nuts, which is what confused me.
The wrong nut on there.
The last one is this 22mm ball joint nut. In order to tighten it, we're going to put the suspension under load again, to simulate the car being at ride height or on the ground. Again, all the nuts are still loose, nothing is tightened at this point. At this point, while the suspension is under load, I'm going to torque down all the nuts except for the ball joint one. It's important to do this while the suspension is under load. If you do it while the suspension is hanging, when you go to lower the car, the bushings can bind or twist. Here are all the nut sizes and the torque specs. The top sway bar link nut is out of view right now, but it's the same specs as the bottom one. I used the impact to snug it down, but it was set to the bolt setting, which prevents over-tightening. After you jack up the suspension, measure again the distance between the center of the hub to the bottom of the fender. It should roughly match the measurement we took at the beginning of the video. Even with the suspension jacked all the way up, mine was longer by about 3/4 of an inch. I'm not sure why that is, but my theory is because the bushings on the old control arm were so worn out that the car was sitting lower than it should have. Now we're going to torque everything down, starting from the middle of the car, outward toward the tire. Sorry again for the bad camera angle, this is just the top sway bar link nut.
Of course. Oh, Lord.
Somehow the torque wrench got stuck here. I couldn't fit a torque wrench for the last top sway bar link nut, so I'm going to lower the suspension a bit.
Oh shit.
Last step is to put a new cotter pin. Putting the new cotter pin took me way longer than it should have. Here's a quick explanation on why it's important to torque all the nuts down with the suspension under load. Suppose in this image the suspension is hanging without any support. If we were to torque down this bolt, once we lower the car to the ground, this part of the control arm is going to move upward, putting tension on this bushing, which could cause premature failure. And that's it. I lowered the knuckle, gonna put the wheel back on, tighten your lug nuts, lower the car, torque down the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds.